She was closing the cafe at midnight when a millionaire walked in and whispered, "One last coffee." Before we explore all the details of this incredible story, tell us where you're following us from and the time. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss a thing, and let's embark on this journey together. She never thought that closing a cafe would change her entire life. The clock on the wall ticked steadily toward midnight as Selena Johnson wiped down the last table, her movements practiced and efficient. The small cafe in the heart of Manhattan had been her sanctuary for 3 years now, a place where she could lose herself in the rhythm of brewing coffee and the soft murmur of conversations. At 27, she had grown comfortable with her quiet routine, even if it meant spending most evenings alone. Selena's dark skin glowed under the warm cafe lights, her natural hair pulled back in a neat bun that revealed the elegant curve of her neck. She wore a simple cream sweater that complemented her rich complexion, and her deep brown eyes held a gentle wisdom that seemed older than her years. There was something serene about her presence, the way she moved with quiet confidence through her small domain. "Another day, another dollar," she murmured to herself, switching off the espresso machine with a familiar click. The cafe fell into deeper silence, broken only by the distant hum of New York traffic and the occasional footstep on the sidewalk outside. She had always been a dreamer, losing herself in the novels she kept tucked behind the counter during quiet afternoons. Music was her other escape, jazz mostly, sometimes blues, melodies that spoke to something deep in her soul. But dreams, she had learned, were safer kept to herself. Real life had a way of disappointing, and at 27, she had grown tired of disappointment. The register drawer slammed shut with more force than necessary. Selena paused, surprised by her own irritation. Maybe it was the approaching winter, or the way couples seemed to find each other everywhere she looked while she went home to an empty apartment night after night. She shook her head, forcing away the self-pity. She had work, she had her books, she had her music. It was enough. It had to be. The bell above the door hadn't rung in over an hour, and she was grateful for the quiet end to what had been a particularly busy Tuesday. Holiday season was approaching, and the cafe had been packed with people seeking warmth and comfort in steaming cups and sweet pastries. Selena enjoyed the bustle during the day, but she treasured these peaceful moments when she could think clearly. She grabbed her coat from behind the counter, a thick burgundy wool coat she'd found at a thrift store, and wrapped it around her shoulders. The November air would be bitter, and her small studio apartment was a 20-minute walk through streets that grew emptier with each block. As she reached for the light switch, her reflection caught her eye in the dark window. Sometimes she wondered what her life might look like if she were braver, if she took more chances, if she believed she deserved more than this safe, predictable routine. But those thoughts always led to dangerous territory, to hopes that had been crushed before. Her finger found the light switch, and the cafe plunged into semi-darkness, illuminated only by the streetlights filtering through the windows. She gathered her purse and keys, her mind already shifting to tomorrow's preparations. She'd need to arrive early to receive the coffee shipment, and Mrs. Patterson would want her usual vanilla latte at exactly 9:15 a.m. The familiar weight of loneliness settled on her shoulders like an old unwelcome friend. 3 years in this city, 3 years of serving coffee to people who hurried past her life without really seeing her. She had co-workers, regular customers, neighbors who nodded politely in the hallway, but no one who truly knew her, no one who asked about her dreams or wondered what made her laugh. Selena walked toward the door, keys jingling softly in her hand. Tomorrow would be another day, another routine, another step in a life that felt increasingly like it was passing her by. She reached for the door handle, already mentally rehearsing the lock sequence she performed every night. That's when she heard it, the soft chime of the bell above the door. Her hand froze on the handle. The cafe was closed, the lights were off, and she distinctly remembered locking the front door an hour ago. But there it was again, that gentle chime that announced every customer's arrival. Selena turned slowly, her heart picking up pace. Through the dim light filtering in from the street, she could see a tall silhouette standing just inside the entrance. The figure was imposing, well-dressed and completely still, as if waiting for permission to exist in her carefully ordered world. "We're closed," she said softly, her voice barely carrying across the empty space. The figure stepped forward, and the streetlight caught his face. Selena's breath hitched. She knew that face. Everyone in New York knew that face. Christopher Hale, the investment mogul whose picture graced the business section of newspapers and the society pages of magazines. Tall, broad-shouldered, with sharp features that photographers loved and striking blue eyes that seemed to see everything. His dark hair was perfectly styled despite the late hour, and his charcoal coat looked like it cost more than she made in 6 months. But it wasn't his wealth or fame that made her forget to breathe. It was the expression in those famous blue eyes, a weariness that she recognized in her own reflection, a loneliness that money clearly couldn't fix. He moved toward the counter with measured steps, his presence filling the small cafe in a way that felt both thrilling and terrifying. When he spoke, his voice was low and smooth, carrying the kind of confidence that came from never having to ask twice for anything. "One last coffee?" he asked, and something in his tone suggested he was asking for much more than just a drink. "Have you ever had someone walk into your life at the exact moment you thought you were invisible to the world?" The last thing she expected was to find herself saying yes. Selina stood frozen for what felt like an eternity, her keys still clutched in her hand, watching Christopher Hale as he waited patiently for her answer. The streetlight cast shadows across his face, and she noticed now how tired he looked beneath that polished exterior. The confident posture was there, the expensive clothes, the unmistakable aura of power, but something in his blue eyes reminded her of her own reflection in quiet moments. She started, then stopped. Every rational thought screamed that she should apologize, explain that they were closed and send him on his way. He was Christopher Hale, for heaven's sake. She was Selina Johnson, a cafe worker who lived paycheck to paycheck in a studio apartment with a leaky faucet. But there was something about the way he asked. Not demanding, not entitled, just hopeful. "The machines are already cleaned," she said finally, surprised by how steady her voice sounded. Christopher's lips curved into the faintest smile. "I don't need anything fancy. Whatever you can manage." Against every piece of common sense she possessed, Selina found herself walking back toward the counter. "You know most coffee shops have normal business hours, right?" she said, unable to keep a hint of amusement from her voice. "So I've heard." He followed her, keeping a respectful distance, but close enough that she could catch the subtle scent of his cologne, something expensive and clean. "But most coffee shops don't have you." The comment should have sounded like a line, something practiced and smooth. Instead, it came out quiet, almost surprised, as if he hadn't meant to say it aloud. Selina busied herself with the simple coffee maker they kept for emergencies, grateful for something to do with her hands. "I'm not sure I should take that as a compliment, considering you don't even know me. I know you stayed." The simple statement hung in the air between them. Selina glanced up to find Christopher watching her with an intensity that made her heart skip. He had removed his coat, revealing a perfectly tailored navy suit that emphasized his broad shoulders and tall frame. Even in the dim light, she could see the sharp line of his jaw, the way his dark hair caught the glow from the street. "Maybe I'm just too polite to turn away someone who looks like they've had a long day," she said, pouring hot water over the coffee grounds. "Have I?" He moved closer to the counter, resting his hands on the surface. She noticed his fingers, long, elegant, with perfectly manicured nails. Rich man's hands. "Had a long day, I mean." Selina looked up at him again, this time really studying his face. There were faint lines around his eyes, a tightness at the corners of his mouth that spoke of stress. "You tell me." Christopher was quiet for a moment, seemingly surprised by her directness. Most people, she imagined, probably told him what they thought he wanted to hear. 16-hour board meeting, he said finally. 3 different presentations, 2 angry investors, and 1 failed merger that cost my company approximately $12 million. Ouch. Selina poured the coffee into a simple white mug, not the fancy cups they used for regular service, but something honest and warm. "Though I'm guessing 12 million isn't quite the same crisis for you that it would be for most people." He accepted the mug, his fingers brushing hers briefly. The contact sent an unexpected spark up her arm. Money doesn't make failure hurt less. It just makes it more expensive. There was something surprisingly vulnerable about the admission. Selina found herself leaning against the counter, studying this man who had walked into her quiet world like something out of a dream. "So you decided to go wandering around Manhattan at midnight looking for coffee?" "I was driving." Christopher took a sip, closing his eyes briefly, as if savoring not just the taste, but the moment itself. "This is perfect, by the way, simple, honest. I was driving and I saw your light and I thought..." He paused, looking almost embarrassed. "I thought it looked like a place where someone might understand that sometimes you need something real at the end of a day full of artifice." Selina felt something shift in her chest. "And you thought a stranger making coffee after hours would provide that?" I hoped. He met her eyes directly. Was I wrong? The question hung between them, loaded with meaning neither of them was quite ready to acknowledge. Outside, the city hummed its nighttime song, distant sirens, the rumble of late buses, the occasional laugh from passers-by. But inside the cafe there was only this strange electric quiet. I don't know yet, Selina said honestly. I've never done this before. What? Made coffee after closing? Had a conversation with someone who could probably buy this entire building without checking his bank balance? Christopher laughed. A real laugh, not the polished sound she'd probably heard in interviews. Is that what you think this is about? Isn't it? He set down the mug and moved around the counter before she could protest, stepping into her space in a way that should have felt presumptuous, but somehow didn't. He was taller than she'd realized, and she had to tilt her head back to meet his gaze. Selina, he said, and hearing her name in his voice sent warmth spiraling through her. If I wanted to impress someone with money, I'd take them to the restaurant on the top floor of my building, where dinner costs more than most people make in a week. I'd send a car, order champagne that's older than you are, and make sure they knew exactly how important I am. Then what are you doing here? Christopher reached up, his fingers hovering just shy of touching her face. I'm hoping to have a real conversation with someone who looks at me like I'm just a man who's had a hard day. Selina's breath caught. This close, she could see flecks of grey in his blue eyes, could feel the warmth radiating from his body. Everything about this moment felt impossible and inevitable at the same time. Christopher, she began, not even sure what she planned to say. That's when they heard it. The sharp sound of knuckles rapping against the front window. Both of them turned toward the sound, and Selina's heart plummeted. Through the glass, she could see Darius Wellington, her building's security guard, who moonlighted as a freelance photographer for gossip blogs. His camera was already raised, the flash firing rapidly as he captured shot after shot of Christopher Hale in a closed cafe with an unknown black woman. Shit, Christopher muttered, stepping back from her immediately. The magic of the moment shattered like glass, and Selina suddenly understood exactly what she had gotten herself into. She should have known that one photo could change everything. Selina's phone buzzed for the 15th time in 10 minutes as she walked to work Wednesday morning. She'd made the mistake of checking the first few messages, screenshots from gossip websites with headlines like "Mystery Woman Captures Billionaire's Heart" and "Christopher Hale's Secret Midnight Rendezvous." In every photo, they looked intimate, romantic, like lovers sharing a secret moment instead of two strangers having coffee. The worst part? Some of the articles had already identified her. Selina Johnson, 27, works at Meridian Café in Manhattan. Sources say she and Hale appeared very close during their after-hours meeting. She turned her phone face down in her coat pocket and quickened her pace. The November morning was crisp, her breath forming small clouds as she hurried through the familiar streets that suddenly felt exposed, as if every passerby might recognize her face from the internet. When she reached the cafe, she found her boss, Cordelia Reeves, waiting outside with her arms crossed and an expression that could have curdled milk. Selina. Cordelia's voice was sharp enough to cut glass. At 52, she was a compact woman with steel grey hair pulled into a severe bun and eyes that missed nothing. She'd built Meridian Café from nothing 15 years ago, and she protected it like a mother bear. Inside. Now. The cafe wasn't scheduled to open for another hour, but Cordelia had clearly been there since dawn. She led Selina past the empty tables to the small office in the back, where a laptop sat open displaying one of the gossip sites. Care to explain this? Cordelia gestured at the screen, where a particularly intimate-looking photo showed Christopher's hand reaching toward Selina's face. Selina's stomach dropped. Mrs. Reeves, I can explain. I've had 12 phone calls since 6 a.m. Reporters, photographers, some influencer wanting to know if she can do a coffee date photo shoot here. Cordelia's voice rose with each word. My cafe is being turned into a circus because you decided to serve coffee to Christopher Hale after closing time. He just wanted coffee, that's all that happened. That's not what these photos suggest. Cordelia clicked to another image. Christopher stepping close to Selina behind the counter, both of them lost in conversation. Do you have any idea what kind of attention this brings? The kind of people who will start coming here looking for gossip instead of coffee? Selina sank into the worn chair across from Cordelia's desk. I'm sorry. I never meant for this to happen. Intention doesn't matter now. Cordelia's expression softened slightly, but her voice remained firm. Selina, you're a good worker, reliable, kind to customers. Never late. But I can't have this chaos in my business. The words hit like a physical blow. Are you firing me? I'm giving you a choice. Cordelia leaned back in her chair. Take a leave of absence until this dies down, or I'll have to let you go permanently. The media attention will pass, but not if you're here every day reminding people of the story. Selina felt tears prick at her eyes. This job wasn't just income. It was her anchor, her routine, her sense of purpose. Without it, she was just another struggling woman in an expensive city with no safety net. How long? She whispered. A month, maybe 2. When people forget about Christopher Hale's mystery cafe girl, you can come back. Mystery cafe girl. The phrase stung more than it should have. Was that all she was now? A footnote in someone else's story. I need to think about it, Selina said, standing on unsteady legs. Take the day. Let me know tomorrow. Cordelia's voice gentled. For what it's worth, I hope you choose to stay away for a while. You deserve better than being someone's scandal. Selina left through the back exit, unable to face the front of the cafe where everything had started. The alley smelled of garbage and regret, and she leaned against the brick wall, finally allowing herself to cry. Her phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't a news alert. It was an unknown number. This is Christopher. I got your number from the cafe's business listing. We need to talk. Can you meet me at Central Park near Bethesda Fountain in an hour, please? She stared at the message for a long moment. Part of her wanted to ignore it, to pretend last night had never happened. But another part, the part that remembered the way he'd looked at her, the vulnerability in his voice, needed to know if any of it had been real. How do I know this is really you? The response came immediately. Because I know you take your coffee black. You have a small scar on your left hand, from what I'm guessing was a childhood accident, and when you laugh, you cover your mouth like you're not supposed to take up space. Also, I can't stop thinking about you. Despite everything, Selina felt warmth spread through her chest. She typed back quickly before she could lose her nerve. 1 hour. Central Park was quieter on a Wednesday morning, mostly joggers and dog walkers enjoying the crisp autumn air. Selina spotted Christopher before he saw her. He was sitting on a bench near the fountain, wearing dark jeans and a black wool coat, looking more like a regular person than the polished businessman from the photos. When he noticed her approaching, he stood immediately, and she could see relief wash over his features. You came, he said simply. I probably shouldn't have. Selina kept several feet between them, acutely aware that even here someone might be watching. I just lost my job because of last night. Christopher's face went pale. What? Not permanently. Maybe. My boss wants me to take a leave of absence until the media attention dies down. The words came out bitter. Apparently I'm bad for business. Jesus, Selina, I'm so sorry. I never meant... What did you mean? The question burst out of her. Months of loneliness and years of playing it safe suddenly erupting. What was last night to you? A whim? A moment of curiosity about how the other half lives? Christopher stepped closer, ignoring her attempt to maintain distance. Last night was the first time in years that I felt like myself instead of a brand. You talked to me like I was human, and now I'm paying for it. Let me fix this. His voice was urgent, desperate. I can call your boss, explain that it was my fault. I can make sure you're compensated for any lost wages. I have connections. Stop. Selina held up her hand. Do you hear yourself? You want to fix this with money and influence. That's exactly what I was afraid of. Christopher looked stricken. Then what do you want me to do? Selina studied his face, searching for something she couldn't quite name. The morning light revealed more details. The way his hair curled slightly at the edges, the small scar above his left eyebrow, the genuine distress in his blue eyes. I want to know if you're going to disappear now that the fun part is over, she said quietly. Because I can handle losing my job, and I can handle being gossiped about, but I can't handle finding out that last night meant nothing to you. Christopher reached for her hands, and this time she didn't pull away. His fingers were warm despite the cold air, steady and sure. Selina, he said, his voice low and intense, last night meant everything to me. That's the problem. Before she could ask what he meant, a flash went off behind them. They turned to see Darius Wellington emerging from behind a nearby tree, camera in hand, grinning like he'd won the lottery. Perfect, he called out. The mysterious cafe girl and the billionaire, hand in hand in Central Park. This is going to be worth a fortune. Sometimes the only way out is through. Walk away, Christopher said quietly to Selina, his eyes never leaving Darius Wellington's triumphant face. Don't look back, don't run. Just walk toward the subway entrance like we never met. I'm not leaving you to handle this alone, Selina whispered back. but Christopher was already moving. In 3 quick strides, he crossed the distance to Darius, who was still grinning as he reviewed the photos on his camera's display. Christopher's hand shot out, not grabbing the camera but placing itself firmly over the lens. "Darius Wellington, right?" Christopher's voice carried the kind of authority that made boardrooms fall silent. "You work building security at 415 East 84th Street, and you freelance for Celebwatch and Urban Gossip." Darius's grin faltered slightly. "You can't stop me from taking pictures in a public park, Hale." "You're absolutely right." Christopher smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "However, I can make you an offer you'd be stupid to refuse." Selina watched the exchange with growing dread. This was exactly what she'd feared. Christopher using his power and money to solve problems, reducing her to a situation that needed to be managed. "I'm listening," Darius said, lowering his camera slightly. $50,000 for every photo on that camera, provided you delete them right now and sign a non-disclosure agreement. Selina's breath caught. She'd never seen that much money in her entire life, and Christopher was offering it as casually as someone might tip a waiter. Darius's eyes widened. 50,000. Each. My lawyer can have the paperwork ready within the hour. Christopher, no. Selina stepped forward, her voice sharp enough to cut through both men's focus. "This isn't how you fix this." Christopher turned to her, confusion clear on his face. "Selina, this solves the problem. He deletes the photos, signs the NDA, and this stays private. And what about tomorrow and the day after that?" Her voice rose despite her efforts to keep it controlled. "Are you going to pay off every photographer, every gossip blogger, every person with a camera phone who sees us together? If that's what it takes—" "No," the word came out fiercer than she'd intended. "No, Christopher, I won't be your charity case." Darius, sensing opportunity in their argument, raised his camera again. "This is even better. Billionaire's girlfriend rejects his money. Celebwatch is going to eat this up." The flash fired twice before Christopher moved. This time, he did grab the camera, his reflexes quicker than Darius had anticipated. "Hey, that's theft. Sue me." Christopher held the camera high above his head, well out of Darius's reach. "Actually, please do. I'd love to explain to a judge how you've been stalking private citizens for tabloid photos." "Christopher, give it back," Selina said firmly. Both men stared at her in surprise. "Give him back his camera," she repeated, looking directly at Christopher. "Right now." "Selina, what are you—" "Trust me." Her dark eyes held his steadily. "Please." After a long moment, Christopher lowered the camera and handed it back to a confused-looking Darius. Selina turned to face the photographer directly. "Mr. Wellington, you want a story? I'll give you one." She reached for Christopher's hand, intertwining their fingers before he could react. Then she looked straight into the camera lens. "My name is Selina Johnson. I'm 27 years old. I work at Meridian Café on 47th Street. And yes, I'm falling for Christopher Hale." Her voice was steady, clear, and completely fearless. "Take all the pictures you want. Write whatever story sells the most magazines. But understand this. We're not hiding anymore." Darius's finger hesitated over the camera button, clearly thrown by her directness. "You heard the lady," Christopher said, his voice filled with something that sounded like awe. "Take your pictures." Darius looked between them, his golden opportunity suddenly feeling less golden. "This isn't how this usually goes." "Maybe that's because we're not usual people," Selina said simply. After a moment of uncomfortable silence, Darius lowered his camera completely. "You know what? This isn't actually that interesting anymore." He turned and walked away, muttering under his breath about people who didn't play by the rules. Selina and Christopher stood alone by the fountain, still holding hands, both slightly amazed by what had just happened. "That was—" Christopher began. "Insane," Selina finished. "Completely insane. I was going to say brilliant." He turned to face her fully, his blue eyes bright with admiration. "How did you know he'd back down?" "I didn't." Selina felt her knees go slightly weak as the adrenaline faded. "But I figured if we were going to be a spectacle, we might as well own it." Christopher brought her hand to his lips, pressing a soft kiss to her knuckles. "You said you were falling for me." Heat flooded Selina's cheeks. "I said a lot of things. Did you mean them?" The question hung between them, carrying the weight of everything that had happened in the past 18 hours. Selina studied his face, the sharp line of his jaw, the way his dark hair caught the morning light, the vulnerability in his expression that money couldn't buy or hide. "I meant them," she said quietly, "even though I shouldn't have, even though this is complicated and messy and probably going to end badly." Why does it have to end badly? Because you're you and I'm me, and the entire world is going to have opinions about that. Christopher stepped closer, his free hand coming up to cup her face. Let them have opinions, I only care about yours. Christopher, I know this is fast, I know it's crazy, but I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since you made me that coffee. Not just the way you look, though you're beautiful, the way you talked to me like I was just a person, the way you stayed last night when you could have sent me away, the way you just handled Darius with more grace and courage than I've ever seen. Selena felt tears prick at her eyes. What are you saying? I'm saying I don't want this to be a story that ends with us walking away from each other, because it's too complicated. His thumb traced along her cheekbone. I'm saying I want to figure out how to make this work, whatever it takes. Even if it means people judging you for being with someone like me. Christopher's expression darkened. Anyone who has a problem with me being with you isn't someone whose opinion I value. And what about your business, your reputation? My reputation is built on making smart investments. His smile was soft and genuine. And you, Selena Johnson, feel like the smartest investment I've ever made. Before she could respond, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Saw the news. Call me. Aunt Thea. Selena's stomach dropped. If her aunt in Chicago had already seen the photos, the story was bigger than she'd realized. I need to go, she said, stepping back from Christopher's touch. I need to call my family before they see something worse on the internet. Let me drive you home. Christopher, if you show up at my apartment building, it'll be in tomorrow's headlines. Then let me give you my number. My real number, not the business line. He pulled out his phone. Will you call me tonight? Selena hesitated for only a moment before rattling off her number. When her phone buzzed with his text, just his name and a simple heart emoji, she felt something flutter in her chest despite all her fears. Tonight, she promised. As she walked toward the subway, she could feel him watching her go. When she turned back at the station entrance, he was still standing by the fountain, looking like a man who'd just found something he hadn't realized he'd been searching for. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was Christopher. Thank you for being brave enough for both of us. Selena smiled despite everything and typed back, Don't thank me yet. This is just the beginning. The hardest conversations always happen when you're least prepared for them. Selena's hands trembled slightly as she unlocked her studio apartment door, her phone already buzzing with another call from Aunt Thea. She'd ignored the first 3 calls during the subway ride home, but she knew her aunt well enough to understand that persistence was her middle name. The small apartment felt even tinier than usual as she dropped her coat on the second-hand chair by the window. 24 hours ago, this had been her sanctuary, a cozy space with mismatched furniture she'd lovingly collected from thrift stores, plants crowding the windowsill, and books stacked on every available surface. Now it felt exposed, as if the outside world could peer through the walls and judge every carefully saved dollar that had gone into making this place home. Her phone rang again. This time, she answered. Aunt Thea, Selena Marie Johnson, what in the Lord's name is going on? The familiar voice of her father's sister came through crystal clear, carrying 30 years of Chicago South Side authority. I'm looking at my phone right now, and there's a picture of you holding hands with some white billionaire in Central Park. Please tell me this is some kind of mistake. Selena sank onto her bed, which doubled as her couch in the cramped space. It's not a mistake. Silence stretched across the line for a long moment. Thea Morrison had raised 3 children as a single mother while working as a nurse at Cook County Hospital, and she had opinions about rich men who thought black women were playthings. Baby girl, Thea's voice softened, you know I love you. But men like that, they don't see girls like us as anything more than entertainment. It's not like that, Aunt Thea. Then what is it like? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're about to get your heart broken on a very public stage. Selena closed her eyes, trying to find words for feelings she barely understood herself. He's different than I expected. When he talks to me, it doesn't feel like he's talking down to me. It feels like he sees me. Honey, they all make you feel special at first. That's how they get you invested before they move on to the next shiny thing. The words stung because they echoed Selena's own fears. Maybe you're right. Maybe I'm being naive. I didn't say you were naive. I said you need to be careful. Thea's voice carried the weight of experience. Your mama, God rest her soul, she had a good heart just like you. Sometimes that good heart led her to trust people who didn't deserve it. Selena's mother had died when she was 16, and Thea had been the one to help her navigate the scholarship applications that eventually got her to New York. The comparison to her mother, beautiful, trusting, and ultimately abandoned by Selina's father when things got difficult, hit deeper than intended. "I'm not Mama," Selina said quietly. "No, you're not. You're stronger. But that man's world, it's going to test that strength in ways you can't imagine." Before Selina could respond, there was a knock at her door. Her building didn't have a doorman, and visitors were supposed to be buzzed up. She felt a spike of panic. Had reporters found her address? "Someone's at my door," she whispered to Thea. "Don't answer it. Those media people are like vultures." Selina crept to the door and peered through the peephole. Instead of a reporter, she saw a young woman about her own age, holding a large coffee cup and what looked like a pastry bag. "Ma'am," the woman called softly. "I'm Imogen Fairchild, Mr. Hale's assistant. He asked me to bring you something, but I can just leave it by the door if you prefer." Selina's eyebrows rose. Christopher had sent his assistant to her apartment. She unlocked the door but kept the chain attached, opening it just enough to see the woman clearly. Imogen Fairchild was petite, with auburn hair pulled back in a neat ponytail, wearing a tailored camel coat, and carrying herself with the efficient grace of someone who managed a billionaire's schedule. Her smile was genuine, not the practiced politeness Selina might have expected. "How did you get my address?" Selina asked. "Mr. Hale had me look up the business registration for Meridian Café. Your address was listed as a reference." Imogen's voice was warm, with a slight southern accent. "He wanted you to have your favorite coffee and asked me to find out what kind of pastries you like. I may have bribed one of your co-workers for information." Despite her wariness, Selina found herself almost smiling. "Which co-worker?" "Kieran, the one with the blue hair. He said you always eye the almond croissants but never buy them because they're too expensive." That was embarrassingly accurate. Selina unlatched the chain and opened the door fully. "I also have a message from Mr. Hale," Imogen continued, holding out a sealed envelope along with the coffee and pastry bag. "He wanted you to know that he's handling the media situation, but he understands if you need space to think." "Selina?" Thea's voice came through the phone, which was still pressed to her ear. "Who is that?" "His assistant," Selina said, taking the envelope. "His assistant is at your apartment." "Oh, honey, no. Rich men don't send assistants unless they're trying to manage you." Selina looked at Imogen, who had clearly overheard. The young woman's expression shifted to something that looked almost apologetic. "Actually," Imogen said carefully, "Mr. Hale sent me because he was worried that showing up himself would cause more media attention for you. He's been pacing his office for 2 hours trying to figure out how to make sure you're okay without making things worse." "Aunt Thea, let me call you back," Selina said into the phone. "Selina Marie, I'll call you back. I promise." She hung up and invited Imogen inside, suddenly conscious of her modest apartment in the presence of someone who probably worked in a building worth more than her entire neighborhood. But Imogen looked around with genuine appreciation. "This is lovely, so warm and personal. Mr. Hale's penthouse is beautiful, but it feels like a museum sometimes." "You don't have to be polite," Selina said, opening the coffee cup. The aroma was perfect, exactly how she liked it. "I'm not being polite. I'm being honest." Imogen perched on the edge of the chair by the window. "Can I tell you something? I've worked for Mr. Hale for 3 years. I've seen him with a lot of women, models, actresses, socialites. He's always charming, always generous, but always distant, like he's playing a role." Selina opened the envelope, finding a handwritten note in elegant script. "Selina, I know today has been overwhelming, and I know my world must seem intimidating from the outside. I want you to know that everything I said in the park was true. You don't have to decide anything right now, but I hope you'll give us a chance to figure this out together. The coffee is from a small roastery in Brooklyn that sources directly from farmers. I thought you'd appreciate the ethics behind it. Christopher, he's different with you," Imogen continued. "This morning he asked me to research fair trade coffee suppliers because he wanted to make sure he wasn't supporting anything that went against your values. Then he spent 20 minutes writing and rewriting that note." Selina looked up from the letter. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I've never seen him care about what someone might think of his choices before, and because," Imogen hesitated, "because I think you're good for him. You make him remember that he's human." "His assistant thinks I'm good for him," Selina murmured, taking a sip of the coffee. It was extraordinary, complex and smooth, with notes of chocolate and citrus. "For what it's worth, I also think he's good for you. Not because of the money or the lifestyle, but because he sees you, really sees you. That's rarer than you might think, even among good men." After Imogen left, Selina sat with the coffee and croissant, rereading Christopher's note. Her phone rang again. Aunt Thea, as expected. "Okay," Thea said without preamble. "Tell me everything, and I mean everything." So Selina did. She told her aunt about the lonely night at the cafe, about Christopher's vulnerability, about the way he listened when she talked, about the morning in the park when he let her handle the photographer instead of taking over. When she finished, Thea was quiet for a long moment. "He sent you coffee," she said finally. "Yes. Good coffee. The best I've ever had. And his assistant came herself instead of sending a delivery service." "Yes." Another pause. "Baby girl, I'm still worried. But maybe this one's different. Just promise me you'll be smart about it. Don't lose yourself in his world." "I promise, Aunt Thea. And call me tomorrow. I want to hear how this develops." After they hung up, Selina found herself staring at her reflection in the dark window. The woman looking back at her was the same person who had served coffee yesterday, but something fundamental had shifted. She looked like someone who was about to take the biggest risk of her life. Her phone buzzed with a text from Christopher. "How was the coffee?" she typed back. "Perfect. How did you know I'd never tried anything like it?" "Lucky guess. Can I call you tonight? I have something I want to ask you." Selina's heart skipped. "What kind of something?" "The kind that's better asked in person. But I'll settle for hearing your voice. Some conversations change everything." By 8 o'clock that evening, Selina had changed clothes 3 times and rearranged her small apartment twice. She told herself it was just a phone call, not a date, but her reflection in the bathroom mirror betrayed her nerves. She'd settled on a soft grey sweater that brought out her eyes and had let her natural hair down, the curls framing her face in a way that made her feel both beautiful and authentically herself. When her phone rang at exactly 8:15, she almost didn't answer on the first ring. Too eager. "Hello, Christopher." "Hi." His voice was warm through the phone, with an undertone she couldn't quite identify. "Thank you for answering. I wasn't sure you would. Your assistant is very persuasive. And the coffee was incredible. Imogen said you liked it. She also said your apartment is beautiful." Selina curled up on her bed, tucking her legs beneath her. She didn't have to say that. Imogen doesn't say things she doesn't mean. It's one of the reasons I hired her. There was a pause. "Selina, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be completely honest with me." Her stomach fluttered. "Okay. Are you having second thoughts? About us, I mean. Because if you are, I need to know now before what? Before I ask you on a proper date and make this even more complicated than it already is." Despite her nerves, Selina found herself smiling. "What kind of proper date? The kind where I pick you up at your door, take you somewhere we can actually talk without photographers hiding behind trees, and try to convince you that I'm worth the chaos that comes with my life." "Christopher," she began, but he continued. "I know this is insane. I know we barely know each other, and I know every rational person in your life is probably telling you to run in the opposite direction, but I can't stop thinking about the way you looked at me in that cafe, like you saw something real. I want to know if that was real or if I imagined it." Selina closed her eyes, remembering the moment he'd stepped into her space behind the counter, the vulnerability in his voice when he talked about his failed day, the way he'd let her handle Darius instead of taking over. "You didn't imagine it," she said quietly. "Then have dinner with me tomorrow night. Let me show you who I am when there aren't cameras around." "Where?" "My place." "Your place?" Selina's eyebrows rose. "Christopher, I don't think... I know how that sounds. But hear me out. If we go to a restaurant, every move we make will be dissected in tomorrow's gossip columns. If I come to your apartment, your neighbors will never have peace again. My penthouse has security, privacy, and a view of the city that I think you'd appreciate. And a bedroom," Selina added dryly. Christopher's laugh was rich and genuine. "And a bedroom, yes. But also a living room, a kitchen where I'm going to cook for you, badly probably, and a balcony where we can talk without the rest of New York listening in." "You cook?" "I'm learning. I have a very patient chef who's been giving me lessons via video call. I thought you might find it amusing to watch a billionaire struggle with basic knife skills." The image was so endearing that Selina felt her resistance crumbling. "What would you cook?" "Nothing too ambitious. Pasta, maybe some kind of salad that doesn't come from a bag. Wine that costs more than it should but tastes like it was worth every penny." His voice grew softer. "And conversation. Lots of conversation. I want to know everything about you, Selina. What made you move to New York? What you dream about when you can't sleep? What makes you laugh until your stomach hurts? That's a lot of conversation for one evening. I'm hoping it's the first of many evenings." Selina felt warmth spread through her chest. Christopher, if I say yes, when I say yes because apparently I've lost my mind, what happens after? I mean, after tomorrow night, after next week, after the novelty wears off? The question hung in the air and she could almost hear him thinking. I don't know, he said finally, and she appreciated his honesty. I've never felt like this before, Selena. I've had relationships, but they've always felt like transactions, social obligations. I've never met someone who made me want to cook dinner just to see if I could make them smile. What if you burn the pasta? Then we'll order pizza and laugh about it. What if you hate my apartment? What if we run out of things to talk about? What if we discover we have nothing in common except chemistry? His voice grew more earnest. I don't have answers to any of those questions, but I know I'd rather find out with you than wonder about it for the rest of my life. Selena pulled a throw pillow into her lap, hugging it as she processed his words. Aunt Thea thinks you're going to break my heart. Your aunt sounds like a smart woman. She is. Then she also knows that hearts don't break from being loved. They break from being ignored, dismissed, or taken for granted. I promise you, Selena, whatever else happens between us, you will never be ignored. The sincerity in his voice made her throat tight. 7 o'clock? 7 o'clock. I'll send a car. No. The word came out more firmly than she'd intended. No car. I'll take the subway. Just text me your address. Selena, it's not safe for you to travel alone right now. The media attention... Christopher, if we're going to do this, really do this, then you need to understand something. I'm not going to let fear or media attention or anyone else's opinions change how I live my life. I've been taking the subway by myself for 3 years. One photo in a gossip blog isn't going to stop me now. Another pause. You're remarkable. I'm stubborn. That too. It's one of the things I like about you. They talked for another hour, the conversation flowing from light topics, favorite books, worst jobs they'd ever had, childhood embarrassments, to deeper territory. Christopher told her about growing up with parents who loved him but never quite saw him, about building his fortune partly to prove himself and partly to have something to do with the restless energy that had driven him since childhood. Selena found herself sharing stories she rarely told anyone, about her mother's death, about the scholarship essay that changed her life, about the loneliness of being ambitious in a world that didn't always make space for girls like her. What time is it? Selena asked when she noticed her room had grown dark around her. Almost 10:30. We've been talking for over 2 hours, and I don't want to hang up. Neither did she, which was both thrilling and terrifying. I should get some sleep. I have to figure out what to wear to have dinner with a billionaire. Wear whatever makes you feel like yourself. That's who I want to have dinner with. After they hung up, Selena lay in the dark thinking about the way his voice had sounded when he talked about his parents, about the loneliness that seemed to echo her own. She thought about Aunt Thea's warnings and Imogen's observations, and the way Christopher had asked permission before stepping into her space. Her phone buzzed with a text. 1247 5th Avenue, Penthouse. Doorman will be expecting you. Sweet dreams, Selena. She typed back, if you burn dinner, I'm never speaking to you again. Then I guess I better practice. Good thing I have all day tomorrow. Selena smiled into the darkness, already knowing that tomorrow night would either be the beginning of something beautiful or the most elegant disaster of her life. Either way, she was done running from possibilities. Every fairy tale has a moment when the ordinary girl steps into the extraordinary world. Selena stood on 5th Avenue at 6:50 Thursday evening, craning her neck to look up at the towering glass building that stretched toward the darkening sky. The address Christopher had given her led to one of Manhattan's most exclusive residential towers, the kind of place she'd walked past 100 times without ever imagining she'd have reason to enter. She'd spent most of the day second-guessing her outfit, a deep burgundy dress that skimmed her knees and emphasized her curves without being too formal, paired with black boots that could handle both subway stairs and whatever the evening might bring. Her natural hair was swept up in an elegant twist, with a few curls left loose to frame her face. She felt beautiful, confident, and completely out of her depth. The doorman, a distinguished man with silver hair and kind eyes, smiled as she approached the gleaming entrance. "Ms. Johnson, I presume?" His voice carried a slight Irish accent. "Mr. Hale is expecting you. I'm Finnegan O'Brien, the evening concierge." "Thank you, Mr. O'Brien. Just Finnegan, please. And might I say it's lovely to meet you. Mr. Hale has been... Well, let's just say I've never seen him quite so invested in making sure everything was perfect for an evening." Despite her nerves, Selena found herself smiling. Has he been that obvious? He's had 3 different flower arrangements delivered and sent back, Asked me twice about the weather forecast, and I believe he's changed his shirt at least once since I arrived at 6. Finnegan's eyes twinkled with gentle amusement. In 15 years of working in this building, I've never seen the man nervous about anything. The lobby was stunning. All marble and soft lighting with modern art that probably cost more than she'd make in a lifetime. But Finnegan's warm demeanor made the opulent space feel less intimidating. "The penthouse elevator is just this way," he said, leading her to a private lift that required a key card. "Mr. Hale wanted you to know that you can ask me to call you a cab any time this evening, no questions asked. He said to tell you that your comfort and safety are more important than his feelings." The message was so thoughtful, so clearly designed to give her an escape route without embarrassment, that Selina felt some of her tension ease. The elevator rose smoothly, the numbers climbing higher than she'd ever been in a residential building. When the doors opened directly into Christopher's apartment, she understood why people called it a penthouse. The space was breathtaking, floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of Central Park and the city beyond, modern furniture that managed to be both elegant and comfortable, and art that looked like it belonged in a museum. But what struck her most was how lived-in it felt. Books were scattered on the coffee table, a throw blanket was draped casually over the leather sofa, and she could smell something delicious wafting from what she assumed was the kitchen. "Selina." Christopher's voice came from behind her, and she turned to see him emerging from the kitchen, wearing dark jeans and a white button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up. His hair was slightly mussed, and there was a small smudge of what looked like tomato sauce on his forearm. He looked nervous, human, and absolutely gorgeous. "Hi," she said, suddenly feeling shy despite their long phone conversation the night before. "You're beautiful." The words came out like he couldn't help himself, and she watched his cheeks flush slightly. "I mean, you're always beautiful, but tonight, you're... wow." "Thank you." She gestured toward the windows. "Your view is incredible. Wait until you see it with the lights on. The city looks like a constellation from up here." He moved closer, and she caught the scent of his cologne mixed with something that might have been garlic and herbs. "How was the subway?" "Uneventful. Though I think a couple of people might have recognized me. I got some strange looks." Christopher's expression grew concerned. "Are you okay? Was anyone bothering you?" "I'm fine. Actually, it was kind of funny. This teenage girl kept staring at me, and finally she came over and asked if I was that girl from the Billionaire story. When I said yes, she told me I was her new favorite person because I didn't take his money and kept it real. You have a teenage fan club now, apparently." She also said, and I quote, "He better treat you right or we'll cancel him on TikTok." Christopher laughed, the sound rich and genuine. "I'll keep that in mind. Teenage TikTok users are a powerful force." "Speaking of treating me right," Selina said, nodding toward the kitchen, "how's dinner coming? Something smells amazing." "About that." Christopher ran a hand through his hair, making it even more disheveled. "I may have been slightly overconfident about my cooking abilities. I've been video calling with my chef, Lucien Beaumont, for the past 2 hours, and I think he's reconsidering his career choices." "That bad?" "Let's just say I've learned that al dente is not a suggestion, and that setting off the smoke alarm twice in one evening might be excessive." Selina burst into laughter, the sound echoing through the spacious apartment. Christopher Hale, master of the universe, defeated by pasta. Completely and utterly defeated. "I was hoping you wouldn't notice the slight haze in the air. What's plan B?" "Well, I was hoping you'd help me salvage what's left, or we could order from that Italian place downstairs that Lucien recommended after I told him about my culinary disasters." "Show me the damage," Selina said, following him toward the kitchen. The kitchen was a chef's dream. Marble countertops, professional-grade appliances, and enough space to cook for a small army. It also looked like a tornado had hit it. There were pots in the sink, flour dusting the counter, and what appeared to be the remnants of at least 2 different pasta attempts. "Oh my," Selina said, surveying the chaos. "I know. It's tragic. Lucien said he's never seen someone waste so much expensive cheese in such creative ways." "What were you trying to make? Fettuccine Alfredo?" It seemed simple enough. Pasta, cream, cheese, butter. How hard could it be? Selina picked up a wooden spoon and examined the pan on the stove, which contained what looked like the world's thickest cheese sauce. "Christopher, did you use the entire block of Parmesan? Was I not supposed to? Also, this looks like you used heavy cream, butter, and cream cheese." Lucien said to make it rich. I think he meant flavorful, not capable of being used as construction material. Christopher leaned against the counter, looking so genuinely distressed by his culinary failure that Selina's heart melted a little. "Hey," she said softly, stepping closer to him. "It's okay. It's actually kind of endearing that Christopher Hale, who can probably negotiate billion-dollar deals in his sleep, gets flustered by pasta. I wanted tonight to be perfect for you. It already is perfect." She reached up and gently wiped the tomato sauce from his forearm with a kitchen towel. "You tried to cook for me. Do you know how long it's been since someone tried to cook for me? How long? Never. No one has ever tried to cook for me before." Christopher's eyes softened. "Really? Really? So even if we end up eating cereal for dinner, this is already the most thoughtful date I've ever been on." "We're not eating cereal," Christopher said firmly, "but we might be eating very expensive takeout while sitting in front of the most beautiful view in Manhattan." "That sounds perfect." As if on cue, his phone rang. He glanced at the screen and grimaced. "That's probably Lucian calling to check if I've burned down the kitchen yet." "Answer it. Put it on speaker. I want to meet the chef who's been patiently talking you through this disaster." Christopher accepted the call and put it on speaker. A French accent immediately filled the kitchen. "Christopher, mon ami, please tell me you have not attempted the sauce again without supervision." "Lucien, I'd like you to meet Selina, the woman I've been trying to impress with my non-existent cooking skills." "Ah, Mademoiselle Selina. Finally someone with sense arrives. Christopher, has he poisoned you yet with his cooking?" Selina laughed. "Not yet, but it was close. The Alfredo sauce could probably be used to repair sidewalks." "Mon Dieu, I told him to go slowly with the cheese." "Christopher, you must listen. Cooking is like seduction. It requires patience, finesse, and respect for the ingredients." "I'll remember that for next time," Christopher said, grinning at Selina. "Next time, I'm coming to supervise in person. For now, order from Bellecourt downstairs. Tell them Lucien sent you and ask for the special menu. They will take care of you." After they hung up, Christopher and Selina looked at each other and burst into laughter. "So," Christopher said, "how do you feel about very expensive Italian takeout?" "I feel like it's going to be the best meal I've ever had. The most dangerous moments are the ones that feel perfectly safe." 2 hours later, surrounded by empty containers from what had indeed been the most incredible Italian food Selina had ever tasted, she found herself curled up on Christopher's sofa, with her legs tucked beneath her, watching the city lights twinkle through the floor-to-ceiling windows. A glass of wine, something with a name she couldn't pronounce but that tasted like liquid velvet, rested in her hands. Christopher sat at the other end of the sofa, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him, but far enough to feel safe. He'd changed into a soft grey sweater after accidentally getting more sauce on his shirt, and his hair had settled into perfectly imperfect waves that made her want to run her fingers through them. "Okay," he said, swirling the wine in his own glass. "Most embarrassing moment from childhood, you first." Selina groaned. "We've been trading stories for an hour. How do you still have more questions?" "Because I meant what I said last night. I want to know everything." His blue eyes were soft in the dim lighting, focused entirely on her. "Besides, you laughed at my cooking disaster. It's only fair that I get to laugh at your childhood disasters." "Fine, but this stays between us. I wouldn't dream of sharing your secrets." Selina took a sip of wine for courage. "I was 8, and there was this boy in my class, Donovan Price, who I was convinced I was going to marry. I wrote him love letters for weeks, but I was too scared to give them to him. So far this is adorable, not embarrassing. Wait for it. So one day I decided to be brave. I put the most romantic letter I'd ever written in his desk during recess. Except I put it in the wrong desk. Dominic Patel found it instead, and he read it out loud to the entire class during show and tell." Christopher tried to suppress his smile. "What did the letter say?" "I told Donovan that he had beautiful eyes like chocolate chips, and that I wanted to hold his hand during movie time forever." Selina buried her face in her hands. "And I signed it, your future wife, Selina Johnson." Christopher lost the battle with his smile, his laughter filling the apartment. 8-year-old Selina was very confident about her romantic prospects. 8-year-old Selina was traumatized. "I didn't write another love letter until I was 23. And how did that one turn out? Never sent it. Apparently I learned my lesson too well." Christopher's expression grew more serious. "What made you brave enough to stay and make me coffee that night?" The question caught her off guard. "I don't know. Maybe because you looked like you needed it as much as I did." "What did you need?" Selina considered the question, watching the lights of the city blur slightly through the wine's gentle haze. "To feel useful to someone who wasn't paying me for it. To have a conversation that mattered, even if it was with a stranger." She looked at him directly. "To remember what it felt like to be seen as more than just someone who serves coffee." "And now?" Now I'm sitting in a penthouse that costs more than I'll make in my lifetime, drinking wine that probably costs more than my rent, talking to a man who could have anyone he wants." She paused. "And somehow I still feel seen." Christopher set down his wine glass and shifted closer to her on the sofa. "Selina, I need you to understand something. The money, the apartment, the lifestyle, none of that matters to me when I'm with you. When you look at me, you don't see a bank account or a business empire. You see me. What do you see when you look at me? I see a woman who chose to stay late and make coffee for a stranger because kindness mattered more than convenience. I see someone who faced down a photographer instead of hiding behind my money. I see intelligence in your eyes, strength in the way you carry yourself, and a heart that's generous even when you have every reason to be guarded." Selina felt her breath catch. "Christopher, I see the woman who made me remember that I'm capable of feeling something real instead of just going through the motions of a life that looks perfect from the outside but feels empty." The honesty in his voice made her chest tight with emotion. "Your life feels empty?" Christopher was quiet for a moment, his gaze drifting to the windows. "I have everything I thought I wanted. Financial success, respect, influence. But until Tuesday night, I couldn't remember the last time I looked forward to anything. The last time I felt anticipation instead of obligation. And now I spend my days thinking about what I want to tell you when I call, what might make you smile, how your voice sounds when you first wake up in the morning." He looked back at her, vulnerability written across his features. "Now I feel like I'm living instead of just existing." Selina set down her wine glass, her hands suddenly unsteady. "This is happening very fast." "Too fast? I don't know. Part of me thinks I should be terrified. Part of me thinks I should run before I get too attached to something that feels too good to be real. What does the other part think? The other part thinks maybe I've been so afraid of getting hurt that I forgot what it felt like to be truly happy." Christopher reached across the space between them, his fingers finding hers. "Are you happy right now?" "Terrifyingly happy." "Good, because I haven't been this happy since—" He paused, thinking. "I don't think I've ever been this happy." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, hands linked, the city spreading out below them like a glittering carpet. Selina had never felt so high above the world, both literally and figuratively. "Can I ask you something personal?" she said finally. "Everything about tonight has been personal. Why haven't you ever been this happy before? I mean, you have everything most people dream of." Christopher's thumb traced gentle circles on the back of her hand. "Because everything I had was built around what I thought I should want, not what I actually wanted. Success, respect, financial security, those were goals other people set for me. I achieved them, but they didn't fill the spaces I didn't even know were empty. What about relationships? You've never—" "I've had relationships. Beautiful women, intelligent women, women who understood my world and fit perfectly into it." His voice grew softer. "But they felt like beautiful accessories to a beautiful life, elegant, appropriate, and ultimately interchangeable. That sounds lonely." It was. I just didn't realize how lonely until I met someone who made me feel the opposite." Selina felt tears prick at her eyes. "You can't say things like that to me." "Why not?" "Because it makes me want to believe this is real, and believing feels dangerous." Christopher lifted their joined hands, pressing a soft kiss to her knuckles. "What if I told you that dangerous might be exactly what we both need?" Before she could answer, her phone buzzed on the coffee table. The screen showed Aunt Thea's name, and Selina's stomach dropped. It was almost 11 o'clock. Her aunt never called this late unless something was wrong. "I should take this," she said, reluctantly pulling her hand from Christopher's. "Aunt Thea, is everything okay? Baby girl, I need you to turn on Channel 7 News right now." Selina's blood went cold. "Why? What's wrong? Just turn it on. And honey, whatever you see, remember that your aunt loves you and we'll figure this out together." Christopher was already reaching for the remote, his expression shifting from romantic contentment to sharp concern. The large television screen flickered to life, and within moments they found themselves staring at a news broadcast that made Selina's world tilt sideways. Exclusive investigation into the mysterious woman who's captured billionaire Christopher Hale's attention. Our sources have uncovered information about Selina Johnson that raises serious questions about her motives. The screen filled with photos, Selina leaving her apartment building, walking to work, sitting alone in a coffee shop. But worse than the photos were the headlines scrolling across the bottom. Mystery woman's secret past and what Christopher Hale doesn't know about his new love interest. "Turn it off," Selina whispered, but Christopher was frozen, staring at the screen as the reporter continued. Sources close to the investigation reveal that Ms. Johnson may not be the simple cafe worker she appears to be. Stay tuned as we reveal exclusive details that could change everything about this modern-day fairy tale romance. The screen faded to commercial, leaving them in devastating silence. The truth doesn't always set you free. Sometimes it just changes the cage. Selina. Christopher's voice was careful, controlled, but she could hear the uncertainty underneath. What secret past? Selina stood from the sofa, pacing to the windows, her reflection ghost-like against the city lights. Her phone was still pressed to her ear, Aunt Thea's worried breathing audible in the silence. "Baby girl, talk to me." Thea's voice came through the speaker. "What are they going to find?" "I don't know," Selina whispered, but even as she said it, she knew it wasn't entirely true. There were things in her past, not shameful things, but private things, that she'd never told anyone except family. Christopher approached slowly, like she was a wounded animal that might bolt. "Selina, whatever it is, we can handle it together." She turned to face him, seeing her own fear reflected in his blue eyes. "Can we? Because 30 seconds ago, you were telling me how different I am from everyone else in your world. What happens when you find out I'm not as different as you thought? What does that mean?" Selina looked at her phone, where Aunt Thea was still waiting. "Aunt Thea, I need to call you back." "Selina Marie Johnson, don't you dare hang up on me when—" "I'll call you back, I promise." She ended the call and set the phone down with trembling fingers. Christopher was watching her with an expression she couldn't read. Concern, confusion, and something that might have been disappointment. "My father," she said finally, the words feeling like stones in her throat. "My father is Aldrich Montgomery." Christopher's face went completely blank. Aldrich Montgomery. The Aldrich Montgomery. "Yes, the oil executive. The one who's been in and out of federal court for the past decade over environmental violations and tax evasion. Yes, the man who abandoned his first family when he was caught embezzling from his own company's pension fund." Selina's shoulders sagged. "Yes." Christopher ran his hands through his hair, turning away from her. "Jesus, Selina. Aldrich Montgomery is your father?" "A father I haven't spoken to in 11 years. A father who left my mother when she was dying of cancer because the medical bills were damaging his reputation. A father whose name I've spent my entire adult life trying to live down. But you're his daughter." The way he said it, like it was a fact that changed everything about her, made something cold and hard settle in Selina's chest. "I'm his daughter the same way you're your father's son," she said, her voice growing stronger. "By biology, not by choice. By accident, not by action." Christopher was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the city. "Do you know what this means for me, for my business?" And there it was. The question she'd been afraid he'd ask. The one that revealed what really mattered to him when the fairy tale collided with reality. "I know exactly what it means," she said quietly. "It means that dating the daughter of Aldrich Montgomery would be a public relations nightmare for a man who's built his reputation on ethical investments." "Selina, I didn't mean—" "Yes, you did." She moved toward the sofa, gathering her purse with hands that were remarkably steady, considering her world was falling apart. "And you're not wrong. I know what my father is. I know what association with his name could cost you. Where are you going?" "Home, before this gets any worse for either of us." Christopher stepped between her and the elevator. "Stop. Just stop. Let me think." "There's nothing to think about, Christopher. The math is simple. Billionaire dating disgraced oil executive's daughter equals scandal. Billionaire walking away from disgraced oil executive's daughter equals good judgment. That's not what this is about, isn't it?" Selina looked at him directly, seeing the war playing out across his features. 30 minutes ago you were telling me I made you feel alive. Now you're calculating the cost of being seen with me. I'm trying to figure out how to protect us both. There is no us to protect. There's you, your reputation, and your billions. And there's me, my father's daughter, who was stupid enough to think fairy tales were real. Christopher's jaw tightened. "You lied to me." "I never lied to you. I told you I worked at a cafe, and I do. I told you I moved to New York for a fresh start, and I did. I told you I was falling for you, and I was." Her voice cracked slightly on the last words. "What I didn't tell you was that I've been running from my father's shadow my entire adult life. You should have told me." "When?" "When you walked into my cafe at midnight, when we were being photographed in Central Park, when you were cooking me dinner and telling me I made you feel human." Tears she'd been fighting finally broke free. "At what point in our 3-day relationship should I have said, 'Oh, by the way, my father is one of the most hated men in America'?" Christopher reached for her, but she stepped back. Don't. Please don't touch me right now, because if you do, I might forget that this is exactly what I was afraid would happen. Selina, I care about you. That hasn't changed. But everything else has, hasn't it? The way you look at me, the calculations you're running in your head, the future you were imagining 5 minutes ago. Christopher was quiet, and his silence was answer enough. I need to go, she said, moving toward the elevator again. This time he didn't try to stop her, but his voice followed her. The media will be brutal. They'll dig up everything about your father, your family, your past. Are you prepared for that? She turned back to him one last time, memorizing the way he looked in his expensive sweater in his expensive apartment, surrounded by his beautiful, uncomplicated life. I've been prepared for that my entire life. The question is, are you prepared to be the man who threw away something real because it came with complications? The elevator doors opened at her touch, and she stepped inside. As the doors began to close, she saw Christopher take a step toward her, his hand reaching out as if to stop her. But he didn't say the words she needed to hear. He didn't say that she mattered more than the scandal. He didn't say that he'd fight for her, fight for them, fight for the happiness they'd found in each other. He just watched her go. The elevator descended in silence, carrying her away from the most beautiful night of her life and back to the reality she'd tried so hard to escape. When the doors opened in the lobby, Finnegan was waiting with a concerned expression and a discreet tissue. Miss Johnson, are you all right? I'm fine, Finnegan. Thank you for everything. The paparazzi are gathering outside. Would you like me to call you a car from the garage? No, thank you. I'll take the subway. Miss, I really don't think... I'll take the subway, she repeated more firmly. It's who I am. It's who I've always been. As she walked through the lobby toward the back exit, Finnegan indicated. Her phone buzzed with texts. Aunt Thea, Cordelia from the Café, even Imogen, but there was nothing from Christopher. The November night was cold against her face as she emerged onto a side street, away from the photographers who were probably still watching the main entrance. She pulled her coat tight around her and began the long walk to the subway, leaving behind the fairy tale that had lasted exactly 3 days. Behind her, 50 floors up, a man stood at his window watching the street, his hand pressed against the glass as if he could somehow reach through it and undo the last hour of his life. But some moments, once broken, can never be put back together the same way. Sometimes the biggest risk is not taking one at all. 3 days after the worst night of her life, Selina sat in her studio apartment, surrounded by newspapers, tablets and laptops, all displaying various iterations of her personal hell. The headlines had only gotten worse. Billionaire's mystery woman, daughter of corporate criminal, love scam, did Selina Johnson target Christopher Hale, and the particularly cruel From Café to Penthouse, modern gold digger's master plan. Her phone had been ringing non-stop. Reporters, bloggers, even a producer from a reality show who wanted to tell her side of the story. She'd stopped answering 3 days ago. Aunt Thea had arrived that morning from Chicago, bustling around the small apartment like a protective hurricane, making tea and muttering threats against journalists under her breath. Baby girl, you need to eat something, Thea said, setting a plate of toast in front of Selina. Starving yourself won't make this go away. I'm not hungry. You haven't been hungry for 3 days. That's not healthy. Selina picked up her laptop, scrolling through the latest round of articles. Listen to this one. Sources close to Christopher Hale confirm that the billionaire feels betrayed by Johnson's deception and is considering legal action to protect his reputation. Legal action? Thea's voice rose dangerously. For what? Falling in love with him? For not disclosing my father's identity, apparently. Selina's voice was hollow. They're painting it like I deliberately targeted him as part of some elaborate scheme. That's ridiculous. You didn't even know who he was when he walked into that cafe. Try telling that to the internet. Thea sat down beside her niece, studying her face with the sharp eyes of someone who'd raised 3 children through various crises. Selina, honey, what aren't you telling me? What do you mean? I mean, you're acting like someone who's given up, and that's not the girl I raised. The Selina I know would be fighting back, defending herself, making sure people knew the truth. Selina closed the laptop and leaned back against the couch cushions. What's the point? Even if I convince the world that I'm not a gold digger, even if I prove that I never lied about anything that mattered, it doesn't change the fundamental problem, which is, I'm still Aldrich Montgomery's daughter. Christopher is still a billionaire who can't afford to be associated with scandal. The math doesn't work, Aunt Thea. It never worked. So you're just going to give up? I'm being realistic. No, you're being scared. Thea's voice was gentle but firm. You're doing exactly what your mother did when things got difficult with your father. You're deciding that you're not worth fighting for. The words hit Selina like a physical blow. That's not, yes it is. Your mother convinced herself that she was too much trouble, too complicated, too damaged for love. She let your father walk away without a fight because she believed she deserved to be abandoned. Tears Selina had been holding back for days finally broke free. Maybe she was right. Maybe I am too complicated. Or maybe, Thea said, pulling her niece into her arms, you're worth more than any man's reputation, and it's time someone reminded you of that. Before Selina could respond, there was a knock at her door. Not the gentle tap of a neighbor, but the firm, authoritative knock of someone with purpose. If that's another reporter, Thea muttered, standing up with the look of a woman prepared for battle. Selina checked the peephole and froze. It's Imogen, Christopher's assistant. Well, that's interesting. Selina opened the door to find Imogen Fairchild looking nothing like the polished professional she'd met before. Her auburn hair was slightly mussed, her usually perfect makeup was smudged, and she was carrying what appeared to be a manila folder and a very large coffee. Ms. Johnson, I'm sorry to bother you, but I need to talk to you. It's about Mr. Hale. If he sent you to... He didn't send me. He doesn't know I'm here. If he knew, he'd probably fire me. Imogen stepped into the apartment, nodding politely to Thea. Mrs. Morrison, I presume? I'm Imogen Fairchild. I know who you are, honey. What I don't know is why you're here. Imogen set the folder down on Selina's coffee table, because someone needs to tell Selina the truth about what's been happening since Thursday night. What truth? Selina asked warily. The truth about a man who's been making the biggest mistake of his life, and is too proud and too scared to admit it. Imogen opened the folder, revealing newspaper clippings, printed emails, and what looked like legal documents. Mr. Hale hasn't eaten or slept properly in 3 days. He's been in his office around the clock, and not because he's working, because he can't stand to be in his apartment where everything reminds him of you. Imogen, let me finish. The morning after you left, he called an emergency meeting with his legal team and his publicists. Everyone assumed he wanted to distance himself from you, create a narrative that protected his reputation. Selina's heart sank. And instead, he fired them. All of them. He told them that any publicist who thought his relationship with you was a liability wasn't someone he wanted working for him. Thea raised an eyebrow. He fired his entire PR team. His legal team too, when they suggested he could sue you for misrepresentation. Imogen pulled out a series of printed emails. Then he spent the next 2 days researching every article, every claim, every source that was spreading lies about you. What kind of lies? Selina asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know. That you targeted him specifically, that you somehow orchestrated that first meeting, that your feelings weren't genuine. Imogen's voice grew fierce. He's been systematically debunking every single false claim with evidence, timestamps, witness statements. He even got security footage from your cafe showing that you had no idea who he was when he walked in. Selina stared at the papers in front of her. Why would he do that if he doesn't want to be with me? Because he does want to be with you. He's just been too much of a coward to admit it. Then why hasn't he called? The question came out smaller than Selina intended. Because he thinks he doesn't deserve you. Because he thinks you'll never forgive him for hesitating when you needed him to choose you without question. Imogen leaned forward. Selina, I've never seen him like this. He's not the same man who was confident and decisive and always knew exactly what he wanted. He's broken. Good, Thea said firmly. He should be broken. My niece deserved better than what he gave her. You're absolutely right, Imogen agreed. But the question is, does she deserve better than what he's trying to give her now? She pulled out the last document, something that looked official and legal. This morning, Mr. Hale liquidated 15% of his holdings and donated the proceeds to environmental cleanup efforts and cancer research foundations. The donation was made in your mother's name. Selina's hands shook as she took the document. Lydia Johnson Memorial Foundation, $150 million. He's also been meeting with investigative journalists who specialize in corporate crime. He's providing them with information and resources to ensure that your father faces consequences for his actions, not because he wants revenge, but because he wants you to know that being related to someone doesn't make you responsible for their choices. I don't understand, Selina whispered. He's trying to give you everything he should have given you Thursday night, his complete faith in who you are, his willingness to fight for you, and his determination to build a world where your father's shadow can't touch you. Thea was studying the papers with sharp eyes. "This is all well and good, honey, but where is he? If he's so sorry, if he wants her so badly, why isn't he here groveling?" "Because," said a voice from the doorway, "he didn't think he had the right to ask for forgiveness until he'd proven he deserved it." All three women turned to see Christopher standing in the hallway, looking like he hadn't slept in days. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, his clothes were wrinkled, and his blue eyes were red-rimmed with exhaustion and what might have been tears. "How did you get in?" Selina asked, her heart hammering against her ribs. "Finnegan. He said that any man stupid enough to let you walk away deserved to suffer, but any man willing to spend 3 days trying to make it right deserved a chance to grovel properly." He stepped into the apartment, his gaze finding hers and holding it. "Selina, I am so sorry for hesitating, for calculating, for making you feel like you were anything less than the most important thing in my life. Christopher, please let me say this. I spent 3 days trying to figure out how to protect you from my world, how to shield you from the media and the gossip and the judgment, and then I realized I was doing it backwards." He moved closer, close enough that she could see the exhaustion and pain written across his features. "I don't want to protect you from my world. I want to change my world so it's worthy of you. I want to use every resource I have, every connection, every dollar, to make sure that your kindness and your strength and your beautiful heart are protected and cherished." Tears were streaming down Selina's face now. "You hurt me. I know. I hurt me too. I hurt us both, because I was too much of a coward to choose love over reputation when it mattered most." He dropped to his knees in front of her chair. "Selina Johnson, I am choosing love. I am choosing you. I am choosing us, no matter what it costs, no matter who disapproves, no matter what challenges we face. And if your business suffers, if people judge you for being with Aldrich Montgomery's daughter, then they'll learn that Aldrich Montgomery's daughter is the woman who taught me what it means to be human. The woman who made me remember that courage isn't about making safe choices, it's about making the right ones." He reached into his pocket, pulling out a small velvet box that made Selina's breath catch. "I know it's too soon. I know we've only known each other for 6 days, and 3 of those days were hell. But I also know that I want to spend the rest of my life proving that you were right to take a chance on me." He opened the box, revealing a ring that was beautiful in its simplicity, a single perfect diamond surrounded by smaller stones that caught the light like captured starlight. "Selina Johnson, will you marry me? Will you let me spend forever making up for the 3 worst days of my life? Will you trust me to choose you every day for the rest of our lives?" Selina looked at the man kneeling before her, at the ring that represented not just a proposal, but a promise, at the papers scattered around them that showed the lengths he'd gone to prove his love. "Yes," she whispered, and then louder through her tears, "Yes, Christopher, yes, to all of it." As he slipped the ring onto her finger and pulled her into his arms, Aunt Thea wiped her own eyes and muttered, "Well, it's about damn time." And Imogen, who had orchestrated this entire reunion, quietly gathered her papers and slipped out the door, leaving them to begin the rest of their lives together. 2 years later, love doesn't erase the past. It transforms the future. The November evening was crisp and clear as Selina Hale stood at the entrance of Meridian Café, keys in her hand, watching through the window as her husband of 18 months carefully arranged chairs around tables that gleamed under warm lighting. The cafe looked almost exactly as it had 2 years ago, except for the small plaque by the door that read, "Lydia Johnson Memorial Cafe, a place for stories to begin." She smiled, remembering how terrified she'd been the first time she'd walked back into this space as the owner rather than an employee. Cordelia Reeves had been more than happy to sell when Selina and Christopher made an offer that would allow the older woman to retire comfortably to Florida, but buying the cafe had been only the beginning. "You're staring?" Christopher called out, catching sight of her through the window. Even after all this time, her heart still did a little flip when he smiled at her like that, like she was the most fascinating thing in his world. "I'm admiring," she called back, pushing open the door. The bell chimed the same familiar note, but now the sound carried different memories. "How are you doing with the setup?" "Better than I did with cooking our first dinner," he said, straightening a table that was already perfectly aligned. "Though I'm still not entirely sure why you wanted to have our anniversary dinner here instead of somewhere with actual tablecloths." Selina walked to him, straightening his navy tie, the same color as the suit he'd worn the night they met. "Because this is where it all started. Besides, we have tablecloths. Paper tablecloths don't count." "They do tonight." She surveyed their handiwork. Tomorrow the cafe would reopen after a week-long renovation, but tonight it was theirs alone. They'd moved the small tables together to create one long dining space, covered it with simple white paper, and set it with mismatched plates and mason jar glasses, the kind of unpretentious elegance that had become their signature. "Nervous?" Christopher asked, noting the way she was fidgeting with her wedding ring, a simple band that complemented her engagement ring perfectly. "A little. It's been 2 years since we've hosted everyone together." Everyone was arriving in 30 minutes for what had become an annual tradition, the anniversary of the night that changed everything, as Aunt Thea called it. This year felt especially significant because they were celebrating not just their relationship, but everything they'd built together. The past 2 years hadn't been easy. The media attention had been brutal at first, and Selina had needed months to learn how to navigate the scrutiny that came with being Christopher Hale's wife. But they'd faced it together, and gradually the narrative had shifted. The business world had watched in fascination as Christopher transformed his investment firm to focus exclusively on ethical, sustainable businesses. His profits had initially declined, but his reputation had soared, and clients who valued integrity over maximum returns had flocked to him. Selina, meanwhile, had discovered a talent for business that surprised everyone, including herself. What had started as one renovated cafe had grown into a small chain of community coffee shops, each one hiring locally and sourcing ethically. She'd kept her promise to herself. She was building something meaningful, not just managing Christopher's money. "Here," Christopher said, pulling a familiar white envelope from his jacket pocket. "I have something for you. We said no gifts until after dinner." "This isn't a gift. It's tradition." Selina opened the envelope to find a handwritten note in Christopher's elegant script. "My dearest Selina, 2 years ago tonight, I walked into a cafe looking for coffee and found my entire future instead. I've learned that the best investments aren't in markets or companies. They're in people who make you brave enough to become who you were meant to be. Thank you for teaching me that love isn't about finding someone perfect. It's about finding someone worth growing perfect with. Forever yours, Christopher." "You've been writing me notes for 2 years," she said, her eyes misty. "How do you still make me cry?" "Practice," he said, pulling her into his arms. "Besides, you started it with that first smile." Before she could respond, the door chimed and Aunt Thea's voice filled the cafe. "If y'all are in there being romantic without us, I'm going to be very disappointed." They separated, laughing, as their chosen family began to arrive. Aunt Thea entered first, now a regular visitor to New York and Christopher's most vocal supporter after deciding he'd earned his place in the family. She was followed by Imogen Fairchild, who had become not just Christopher's most trusted employee, but one of Selina's closest friends. Finnegan O'Brien arrived with his wife, Moira, carrying flowers from their Brooklyn garden. He'd become an unexpected friend, always ready with gentle wisdom and terrible jokes. Cordelia Reeves had flown up from Florida, beaming with pride at what her former employee had accomplished. Even Kieran, now the manager of the flagship cafe and sporting purple hair instead of blue, arrived with his boyfriend and a playlist he'd curated specifically for the evening. As the group settled around the long table, sharing stories and laughter over dinner from the Italian restaurant downstairs, Selina felt the deep contentment that came from being surrounded by people who had chosen to love each other despite, or perhaps because of, their complicated histories. "Speech," Aunt Thea demanded as they finished dessert. "Christopher, you gave a beautiful one last year. Let's hear from the bride this time." Selina stood, looking around at the faces that had become her anchor in the storm of public life. 2 years ago, I thought I knew what I wanted. A simple life, a safe routine, protection from the kind of complications that had hurt my family. She reached for Christopher's hand. "But I learned that the best things in life aren't simple or safe. They're worth fighting for, worth growing for, worth taking risks for." "Here, here," Finnegan called out, raising his mason jar of wine. "I learned that family isn't just about who you're born to. It's about who chooses to stay when things get difficult." Her gaze swept the table. "And I learned that sometimes the most beautiful love stories start in the most ordinary places, between the most unlikely people at the most unexpected times." "To unexpected love," Imogen toasted. "To second chances," added Cordelia. "To stubborn people who don't know when to quit," laughed Aunt Thea. As the evening wound down and their guests began to leave, Selina and Christopher found themselves alone in the cafe once again, just as they had been that first night. But everything was different now. They were different now. "Any regrets?" Christopher asked as they turned off the lights and prepared to lock up. Selina considered the question, thinking about the woman she'd been 2 years ago, lonely, careful, convinced that love was something that happened to other people. Then she thought about the woman she was now, married, confident, building a life that mattered. "Just one," she said finally. Christopher's face grew concerned. "What? I regret that it took me so long to believe I deserved something this beautiful." He pulled her close, pressing a soft kiss to her forehead. "We had to be ready for each other. Maybe if we'd met any sooner, we wouldn't have been brave enough to fight for this." As they walked out into the November night, Selena looked back at the cafe one more time. Through the window, she could see the corner table where everything had changed, now cleared and ready for tomorrow's customers who would come seeking warmth, comfort, and maybe, if they were very lucky, the kind of love that changes everything. "Come on, Mrs. Hale," Christopher said, taking her hand. "Let's go home." And as they walked through the streets of Manhattan, past the places where their story had unfolded, Selena reflected on the truth she'd learned. Sometimes the universe doesn't give you what you ask for. It gives you what you need, wrapped in challenges that teach you how strong love can make you. The cafe would open tomorrow, full of new stories waiting to begin. But tonight belonged to them, and to the love that had started with a simple question: one last coffee. 2 years later, they were still finding new answers to that question every day. Final message: love doesn't always come in the package we expect, at the time we're ready, or without complications that test our courage. But when it's real, when it's worth fighting for, it transforms not just our hearts, but our entire understanding of what's possible. What did this story teach you about taking chances on love, even when the odds seem impossible? Your participation means a lot to the channel. Please share your thoughts in the comments. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a like and comment your thoughts. Your participation is very important to us. See you next time.